All right, so let us begin. Tantric woman, a myth, legend, or reality? Before we can start fully answering this question, a couple of very brief overview points about Tantra itself, and this is foremost meant for the people who are new to our teachings, who are new to our school, who maybe are watching us for the first time. And yes, so let's go right into that. So Tantra is a spiritual teaching originating from India thousands of years ago. And the aim of all of Tantric teachings is to bring a person to a high state of consciousness, to kind of, or liberation or moksha, or there are different words for this. Basically, it's a path of spiritual evolution or self-evolution. And what makes Tantra very unique from many or almost all other teachings out there which are available is that Tantra is the path of Shakti. Tantra is the path of energy. Shakti also means the goddess and the feminine aspect. And Tantra is utilizing this very strongly in all the different facets of Tantric teachings. And when we say Shakti and the goddess, we definitely don't mean that Tantra is just a path for women. Absolutely not. The Shakti or the goddess in Tantra means something much bigger, something much more metaphysical than just a physical existence of a woman. And namely, it means it kind of encompasses all the energies which are available in the universe and calls them all as the feminine aspect of the manifestation versus the masculine aspect of the manifestation, which is designated with the name Shiva. Now, Tantra being a spiritual path, it is using energy for this self-transformation, for this reaching these higher states of consciousness. One of the additional unique elements about Tantra is that it is also including sexuality as an authentic spiritual method. And this you don't see in most, not just in most, you don't see that in 95% spiritual traditions out there which are available, that sexuality is something amazing, something holy, something spiritual, that it's actually included as a really authentic tool for spiritual evolution. On the contrary, in many traditions, this is something which is very repressed or pushed to the side or not talked about. So let's come closer to the topic at hand today, the Tantric woman. And the question comes, so how do we start finding answers to this question? What a Tantric woman is it a myth, legend, reality, and so on? How do we start tackling this problem, or how do we start climbing this mountain? One of the perhaps easiest or very logical ways, in my opinion, is to look at examples of Tantric women in history, for example. And see what kind of characteristics they had and what kind of lives and spiritual lives and what did they manifest as women. And from that we can make a lot of deductions and make a lot of conclusions. So throughout history, there have been, of course, a lot of spiritual women, and including Tantric women, but it is true that many of the male yogis and Tantric yogis are much more kind of famous, much more pronounced in the spiritual environments. But this is not because there weren't any women, but it's just it's actually related to certain energy differences between men and women, why men tend to be, more visible in spirituality, but this is a topic for another conversation. So the Tantric women, or examples that I would like to bring out today, are two of them. A very famous Tantric Yogini from India was Laleshwari, or Lalla, that's a second name that she had. And she was living in the 14th century in India, specifically in the northern part of India, in Kashmir. And she was and still is considered one of the Kashmiri mystics. Her story or life story says that when she reached the age of 24, she actually left her home and started to follow a tantric guru, a shiva teacher, and started doing her practices. And she's considered to be one of the, tantric female kind of masters, or really beautiful examples of feminine manifestation, a tantric woman manifestation. She developed something that is called like mystic poetry, and specifically it's called Vatsun or Vaks. We know from other tantric or yogic teachings that Vaks also means the voice. So as she was having her practices and experiences, she was writing it down in very amazing, beautiful poems. And I would like to read one of you to you right now. It's a very short one, but this few lines, it's just 4 lines, it actually includes already so much about the tantric path. Try to follow what the words are and try to make your own conclusions already. Okay, what does it mean from a tantric perspective, if you have any background in tantra already? And try to, kind of get the meaning of that, and I'll comment this afterwards. So one of the poems is the following. Whatever work I did became worship of the Lord. Whatever word I uttered became a prayer. Whatever this body of mine experienced became the sadhana of Shiva or Shiva. Tantra illuminating my path to Paramashiva. So what is hiding in these apparently very, or superficially looking very simple words is actually a very strong tantric statement. Namely, she says that whatever work I did became the worship of the Lord. Whatever word I uttered and whatever this body of mine experienced became the sadhana, or became the spiritual practice towards aspiring to Paramashiva, or the ultimate, the divine consciousness. It essentially kind of groups together all the different possible practices that Tantra includes. Tantra being the science of energy and using that for spirituality, you can use energy when you do any kind of activity, when your body, your physical body has any kind of experience, such as even when you have your morning breakfast, or when you are taking a walk in the park, or when you are making love, definitely, when you are reading a book, when you are watching a movie, and so on and so on and so forth. So any activity can be made into a tantric activity if you understand how to utilize the energy behind that. And whatever work I did became a worship of the Lord. Same thing here. So this very simple example here is a very tantric statement, or very tantric. Very strong tantric meaning is behind this poem. So you see, with these simple words, a certain very deep level of mysticism can be passed on, but in order to understand it, you would need to actually know what Tantra is. So a second example that we can consider is more recent, a tantric yogini called Bhairavi Brahmani, and she was living and active in the 19th century, also in India. India is the birthplace of a lot of spiritual masters, female or male. And she was a tantric yogini, and she practiced left-hand tantra. Left-hand tantra means the tantra which includes sexuality in its practices. And what many people actually don't even know, that she was one of the teachers of Ramakrishna Paramahansa. Ramakrishna is a very famous yogi from the 19th century India. There's a lot of stories of him worshipping one of the goddesses, the Kali, which means he was worshipping the feminine aspect, the Shakti. There are stories how he reached high states through that practice as well. But anyway, Bhairavi Brahmani, she initiated Ramakrishna into tantric teachings as well, including also stories say that he was at certain time of his life at least practicing also sexual tantra. Although because of the kind of the pressure of Vedanta in modern India, this aspect of Ramakrishna's life is not very accepted or very publicly talked about. Even kind of a little bit erased out of his life. So that's, however, this is what we know. So Bhairavi Brahmani was teaching him, Ramakrishna, how to unite the, beginning of quotes, the holy and the unholy in the path of reaching liberation. Again, the holy and the unholy, this is a very deep expression, is hiding, a very deep meaning is hiding here, because according to a lot of the spiritual traditions which are non-tantric, they consider the manifestation, the world, right? The energy, including sexuality, including emotions, including desires, and so on, to be something that keeps you away from spirituality. It's like an obstacle. Therefore, we can kind of call it as the unholy part of life. And the holy part would be then, you know, the sattvic, the pure, the prayers, the meditations, and so on, and keeping away from the unholy. But Bhairavi Brahmani, being the tantric yogini, was teaching how to unite the holy and the unholy in order to reach the divine. Essentially, it is again a very, very tantric statement. Basically, how to use energy, how to use Shakti to reach Shiva. Now, let's continue from here. By the way, these two examples, you can find, you know, beautiful pictures of them, not photographs, obviously, but you can find beautiful pictures of these tantric masters. If you have an altar at home where you have maybe pictures of the yogis and you want to have some pictures of authentic tantric yoginis there as well, these two would definitely be something that I would recommend. Print it out and have it there for you ready. So let's continue now into, you know, we are zooming into more and more into the actual characteristics of a tantric woman. How can we define a tantric woman? How can we really, you know, by looking in our own lives or around ourselves, how can we, you know, decide whether I personally am a tantric woman or whether my, you know, friend or this or that woman is tantric or not? Now, I'm going to be giving you a kind of a list of 5 main characteristics, and all of them are equally important, and I would even go as far as to say that all of these boxes should be ticked to call oneself a tantric woman. It's not enough if only one of them is kind of manifesting in your life, or only 2. It's a combination of them all. So, of course, one of the first ones is the one of the main characteristics of the tantric woman would be that she has dedicated her life to managing to control the energy. And this is a very, you know, simple understanding, right? Because, I mean, very logical conclusion, because Tantra being a path of the Shakti, being the path of the energy, how else can you be on the tantric path if you don't actually work with energy? And how can you work with energy unless you control it? So here we are talking about, of course, the sexual energy that needs to be controlled. We are talking about prana and pranic energy. We are talking about also mental energies and mental ripples. We are talking about definitely emotions and emotional energies as well, which can manifest in different ways. And a tantric woman has to have a certain, like, a good level, let's say, not even just the basic minimum level, a good level of being able to control all these different types of energy. By the way, I do remember that several months ago we did a special live event on how to master energy, and over there I was talking even in more detail about all the different types of energy. So you can look it up here in our archive on the live group here. So all of this means that we are definitely not just talking about sexual energy which needs to be controlled. What can be kind of noticed out there, at least this is my experience, is that because the connection with because sexuality is so emphasized as belonging to Tantra, or as making up the most or all of Tantra in modern day, people have done kind of like a second or the next deduction there, that okay, if I am a woman studying tantric sexuality, or if I'm going to courses of sacred sexuality, or how to become multi-orgasmic, or how to, I don't know, use yoni eggs and train my muscles and so on and so forth, and if I'm doing it regularly, then that means I am a tantric woman. Well, there are two problems with this. One is that firstly, just going to courses doesn't make anybody tantric. What is important is how much practice you do outside of any given course, and if you actually do manage to control your sexual energy or not. So this is one thing, and one problem. And the second problem is that let's say you do control your sexual energy, and let's say you are sexually maybe very open, energetically speaking, I mean, and you are even multi-orgasmic, and you are just very, very sensual as a woman in lovemaking and so on. This is wonderful, and it might be very tantric as well, but it does not yet make you into a tantric woman in the full sense of the word. It would be like a great level, a great step to achieve, but there is much, much more to go to call oneself or to identify oneself fully as a tantric woman. So in this path of, or in this effort of controlling the energy, what do you need to understand? You need to know exactly what is a polarity of energy. How does the plus and minus manifest in the world? How does it manifest in your life? How does it manifest in your character, in your emotions, at the level of your chakras? What does it mean? How does it manifest in your partner, in your lover, in your husband, in your family, and so on? What kind of different energies are out there? Like what kind of openness, closedness, or impurity, or blockages, and so on you have at the level of your different chakras as well. The chakras are our kind of a, like satellites to energies, like the receiving, like antennas to energies, receiving and giving. Therefore, as a tantric woman, you need to have a very, very clear understanding about how the chakras actually work. And knowing that there are rainbow colors which are associated with chakras is by far not enough. And it is even misleading. The rainbow colors are not connected to the chakras. So in order to learn all of this, in order to really master energy in the complete sense of this expression, one would need to, yes, learn sexual tantra, sure, but this is just, the first step. One would need to learn and practice tantra yoga. One would need to look into Kundalini yoga, the authentic tantric kind, into meditation techniques. One should read the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, the famous tantric text with 112 techniques for enlightenment. One should be able to navigate in Kashmiri Shaivism, at least to a certain basic level, and hopefully also doing practices from Kashmiri Shaivism. One should understand and practice Lalla yoga, which is a very absolutely powerful practice from Tantra again. One should use and understand how to work with mantras and yantras, the geometrical structures, and also a very, very, very amazing and strong practice in Tantra, for women especially, men do it also, but for women as well, is the Mahavidya yoga, or the yoga of the cosmic powers. this is another very, very amazing teaching which we start giving in our school, I believe in level 6 of the Tantra Yoga program. So all of these different facets of Tantra are like tools of how to master energy. So I was just listing like 10 different things. Sexual energy or sexual teachings of Tantra is just one of them. And there is like, it like branches out into Tantra, branches out into many, many different directions. This is why also in our school, we are a Tantric school, and we are not just teaching the sexual teachings. We are teaching all of these things that I named, because otherwise you would be a school of sexual Tantra. You would not be a school of Tantra. So these things should be kept in mind, and this dedication to the control of energy is something absolutely paramount to become a Tantric woman. Learning all facets of Tantra, studying, practicing all facets. The characteristic number 2 is that an authentic Tantric woman aspires towards full self-realization, towards the ultimate, towards enlightenment. A Tantric woman is wanting to live a spiritual life authentically. So this spiritual aspiration is interwoven into everything that you do in your life. Even if you have a regular job and you go to an office from 9 to 5 and you have family and obligations and so on, still you can integrate the spiritual aspiration and the desire for the higher levels. You can integrate it into your daily life, into the most mundane activities even. So aspiring towards full self-realization, one of the set of tools that would help you, would help a Tantric woman or a woman to become Tantric woman, would be, of course, honoring the yamas and niyamas. So yamas and niyamas are the 10, 5 plus 5 together, 10 kind of recommendations of conduct and of harmonious and spiritually conducive way of life that a Tantric woman cannot ignore. Any spiritual woman, for that matter, should not ignore. But since we're talking about Tantric women here right now, definitely these are important. So a few examples, if you are not so familiar with the yamas and niyamas, are, by the way, they are originating from the Ashtanga yoga, or the yoga of the 8 limbs of Patanjali. Patanjali was a very, very famous yogi, again from India, who kind of systematized the yogic teachings. And I highly recommend to read his Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a famous, famous text. Like a Tantric woman should have read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, this I can tell you, more than once. All right, so a few of the examples of the yamas and niyamas would be, the famous ones: ahimsa, which is the non-violence; satya, truthfulness, and so on; asteya, which is non-stealing; brahmacharya, which means control of the energy; aparigraha, which means non-possessiveness; saucha, purification; santosha, contentment; tapas means discipline or austerity; svadhyaya means self-study; and Ishvara Pranidhana, the spiritual aspiration. A person who integrates these 10 principles into your life, like really, fully, authentically, your life will transform tremendously. For each of these topics in our Tantra Yoga Level 1 retreat, the next one coming up in September, we're going to discuss each and every one of them in depth. And you may think in the beginning, like, okay, what is there to say about non-possessiveness so much, or what is there to say about non-violence? I mean, yes, we shouldn't be violent, and everybody kind of overall we know it and so on. But oh my goodness, if you are approaching these topics from a spiritual point of view, it's like a lot which connects to these principles, and you will be just amazed listening to these teachings where, our teachers can talk more than an hour on each and every one of them, giving just so incredible examples and so on. So for a Tantric woman, honoring these yamas and niyamas definitely has to be there, and this would be like a step which is kind of showing that you are indeed authentically integrating spirituality into your life. On top of that, of course, practicing yoga, practicing meditation, practicing sublimation, and so on is going hand in hand as well. Characteristic number 3 for a tantric woman would be, and now I'm leaving you hanging for a second, I'm very thirsty. So characteristic number 3 is that being a tantric woman means that you have, in ideal case, you are a person who is beyond her ego, or at least having the possibility or having reached a certain level where your ego is tamed, where you are kind of having clarity about your ego, and you have the capacity of keeping it in check on a regular basis. Now, this is, of course, it's a tall order, and this is not something that happens when a woman is going, or a man for that matter, is going to, participate in a couple of workshops here and there, or, do some sacred sexuality, and so on and so forth. And moreover, you can be a very orgasmic woman, but your ego can be extremely inflated nevertheless. And by that, you cannot be authentically tantric if you are driven by your ego in your daily life, in your activities, in your way of being. It doesn't mean that the ego is killed and it doesn't exist. Ego is necessary, of course, to live and to exist in the world. You can read the stories of famous Yogini Mananda Mai, where she reached such a level of egolessness where she didn't anymore have the interest to eat or drink. And her physical body, because of this ego being so out of the picture, started slowly deteriorating and dying. So her disciples had to kind of feed her and give water to her so she would not die in her state of selflessness. So ego is necessary for survival, for kind of being still existing in this physical world. However, it needs to be tamed. You need to be aware of it. You need to be kind of keeping things in check as a tantric woman. Whenever ego is growing and inflating, this is you going in the opposite direction to spirituality. There's no doubt about that. The next characteristic of a tantric woman is that a tantric woman is independent. Now, let me explain what I mean here exactly. Obviously, what I do not mean is a woman who is like, hey, I don't need anybody. I'm alone. I manage alone. Or, one of those ultra feminist statements that, I don't need men. I can take care of myself, including my own pleasure and so on. I don't need men. That is not what I mean by independence. What I mean by independence is that a tantric woman has the ability and the capacity to carry herself and to lift herself. She does not need to rely on an outside support to deal with her issues, to deal with her challenges in life, to deal with her emotions. She doesn't need, to be relying on the man, for example, all the time, or on whatever, friends or Facebook or I don't know what, family and so on. She has this ability to take care of herself. And this requires a certain level of energetic and mental development, which you can attain if you are on a tantric path and if you are authentically doing, yoga and meditation and the Kashmiri Shaivis techniques and this and this and this, the things that are listed earlier. So a tantric woman is independent in managing her own life, her own well-being, and her own energy as well. And this does not mean that a tantric woman never asks for help or never asks for support. No, not at all. It's just that she is not dependent on the outside help and on the outside support in order to exist or in order to have happiness in her life. So this independence also means, as I mentioned, that she can manage her own emotions, and this is a very big topic. We'll probably discuss emotions in some separate seminar later on as well. So this is note to my team behind the screens that, you know, mark it down. Maybe we'll do one on emotions specifically, because there's a lot to say there as well. So a tantric woman can control her emotions, and she not only can control her emotions and her life and so on, she is able to contribute to a relationship. So she is not just the receiver, but she is able to contribute. And moreover, a tantric woman is able and has the knowledge when at the right time to support and to kind of elevate the men in the relationship. There is one characteristic which is very feminine, which all women have, tantric or otherwise, but all women generally, and it's this tendency to test the man, to test the shiva. Women are doing all sorts of different, you know, they throw tantrums and they want to feel that the man takes care of them, or if he can take care of them. They, you know, they might be moody and they might be this and they might be that, and they are constantly kind of testing the man. And this is kind of you know, part of the subconscious mind of almost every woman. However, a tantric woman would be aware of this tendency, and the tantric woman needs to limit this, because very often for, let's call it like non-tantric or regular women, this testing of the man can go very much out of hand and can go into very you know, unproductive and unconducive directions, and can be even very harmful for the relationship, can be harmful for the future of both of the individuals, the man and the woman and so on. And it's just is unnecessary to do it this way. Some testing, so to speak, is part of the feminine nature, and it's beautiful, and it's can be taken in a much more light and soft way. And this is definitely something that a tantric woman cultivates. So not doing this kind of severe testing on the man all the time. A tantric woman is able to support the man spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and be there for him as well when it's necessary. Essentially, a tantric woman is able to kind of navigate between certain situations where she needs to be more emissive and yang, you know, maybe taking care of the man when he is needing support and so on, and in another situation being more on the receptive and yin side and receiving from the man. So these polarities need to be very clear in the head of the tantric woman and navigated between whatever is necessary according to a particular situation. In the Tantric Woman's the Ultimate Tantric Woman's course, which I'm offering from time to time, we are exactly going through all of these different polarities that a fully tantric woman should know about and should be able to manifest according to whatever situation she finds herself. Like, for example, you know, we don't want to be in a very aggressive, dominant kind of state of mind, which we might need when we are having our business meeting and being a CEO of a company. We don't want to come with the same mindset at home to our partner, to our husband, to our lover. That is a recipe for a lot of issues. How do you make a switch? How do you even remember to make a switch, for example? This we talk about in that course extensively. So I'm already kind of going into the final characteristic of a tantric woman, which is that a tantric woman knows the roles of Shiva and Shakti. And she knows, she understands these roles at the more like universal cosmic level, but also at the level of a relationship here in the physical world. Now, in modern day, again, what we see a lot is this kind of push towards a lot of equality between the sexes, right? That, you know, whatever men can do, women can do, and whatever women can do, men should do as well, to the point that there are, you know, men should be breastfeeding with a fake breast and holding the baby like this and so on. It's a real thing, yes. So there's a lot of push right now towards equality between the different genders. However, the spiritual approach, or specifically the tantric approach, is that men and women, Shiva and Shakti, have different roles. And both of them should be playing their own role in the best way they can, because that is the path towards spiritual evolution, towards harmony in the relationship, towards happiness and states of love within yourself as well. And this is actually the true, you know, key or a solution of happy relationships. I am personally would say that this drive for equality between genders and between men and women is gonna, it already has caused a lot of damage to a lot of people, and it's going to continue doing so. Instead of equality, what we say in Tantra is that men and women, or a couple, should be aspiring towards complementarity. So equality means, you know, both are the same and everything is the same and doing the same and same. It is impossible. It is wrong. We were created differently. Women and men are different physically, energetically, emotionally, and so on. And all of this stuff you would learn very, very clearly if you are following our tantric curriculum. But what we do need to aspire towards is complementarity. This means, you know, there are two sides. They are different. My right and my left hand are not the same. They are different. Yet they can come together and form one unit, a strong one. This is what a tantric woman understands and tries to cultivate in her relationships as well, especially with men. So I'm slowly coming to the end of my presentation here. Personally, I feel that this Tantric Woman is a very, very honorable title. It's, for me, has a very deep meaning, as I just described. It has a lot of different layers. It does not just include, you know, oh, I'm multi-orgasmic, so therefore I'm Tantric or something. They are not one and the same, by far not. And I feel that such a title of a Tantric woman should be kind of like deserved, or, you know, there is a lot of superficiality out there in modern day. Let's try to, at least in our community of the Somananda School, try to cultivate more depth when we talk about important concepts, such as the Tantric woman. I find this to be a very elevated, very, you know, just a very a deep meaning which is behind there, and therefore very, very honorable title, which should not be just thrown around easily. So to conclude, a Tantric woman, myth, legend, or a reality? Well, definitely not a myth, because it does actually exist, although Tantric women in modern day are hard to find. So, but definitely not a myth. Is it a legend? There are a lot of interesting legends about the life of Laleshwari, for example, even about the life of Bhairavi Brahmani and so on. So there are some legends as well, but is it the reality? Definitely a reality, and an accessible reality, and an attainable reality for every woman who is taking the practice seriously, who is taking the study of Tantra seriously, and who goes well beyond just the sexual aspect of Tantra and her orgasms and her pleasure and so on. So these 5 characteristics would be essential for a tantric woman. You have a kind of a guidebook now for yourself, assessing yourself if you are one of those already, or perhaps there is more work to be done. I'm going to go into questions now, but before I do so, I know that my team just today put online the next Ultimate Tantric Woman's course, which is offered now longer and as a retreat, 5 days retreat in March next year, so 2020. And it's coming up in Greece, in a beautiful, amazing location there on the island of Greece, where we are doing a few of our courses per year. Look it up on our website, everything is listed. I will be leading it, obviously, and this will be a retreat for women only for 5 days, where we will be in depth covering all of these points and more, which was discussed here. So let's go into questions here. From Ayman. Do women need to be tantric to reach their full feminine potential? What would a tantric woman add to the life of a tantric man? Oh, my goodness. So, first question, do women need to be tantric to reach their full feminine potential? A short answer is that when we talk about feminine potential, when we talk about feminine potential from a tantric perspective, then yes, they need to be fully tantric to reach their full potential. Now, Tantra is just one of the very, very, very few teachings which actually talks about what femininity is and how to cultivate it. And it's not the purpose of it, obviously, why to talk about femininity is not just, how to, I don't know, look beautiful or be sensual or be feminine so you attract more of the men and so on. No, nothing to do with that. Although those are really good collaterals. But the point of cultivating complete femininity for a tantric woman is a spiritual path in itself. Complete femininity, being connected to all these different types of energies and being able to control them and utilize them in various situations, is a path in itself towards enlightenment. Because ultimately, this is the point in Tantra. Tantra is not about, hey, let's feel good or something. It is about the ultimate, the highest. And femininity, in the same way as masculinity, is one path how to reach there. This is why we have these separate courses and teachings for women and for men in our school, because it's a very strong supportive mechanism in understanding the tantric path overall, and my role as a woman in it, or my way, my path as a woman in it, or my role as a man in it. So there is it's a spiritual path. It is not just for having a good life or harmony in relationships or something like that. And what would a tantric woman add to the life of a tantric man? Everything. Remember about the complementarity. A tantric man, of course, can also have a very good and beautiful life being by himself, like not engaging in relationships. A tantric woman also, in the same way, can have fulfillment. However, when you put the two together, there is more energy available for them. And if they are both trained in energy mastery, in tantric sexuality, in mental, emotional control, and so on, then they can support each other on this ladder towards enlightenment. This is the whole concept of tantric relationships. Tantric relationships are like a highway towards your spiritual goals. It is something you don't have to do, but something that you could do. And a tantric woman will be great support for a tantric man on this path, and vice versa. Next question here from Stella. What do you think about the theory that to be a tantric woman means to be guided and the sacred instrument between the spiritual and physical levels, for not only for herself but for all the people around her? Is there any truth in this? So once again, what do you think about the theory that to be a tantric woman means to be a guide and the sacred instrument between the spiritual and physical levels for not only herself but for all the people around her? Yes, there is a lot of truth in it, but the same exact thing is true for a tantric man as well. So this is why it's so important to define authentically what a tantric woman is and what a tantric man is as well. So provided that a tantric woman means these things that I listed earlier, then a person like that can definitely serve as an example, as a role model, as a spiritual role model foremost for other people, for other women, other men also. And this she could be serving as a stepping stone between the spirit, between the everyday life towards the spiritual life. Absolutely, because tantric path overall is about combining these two together, and the tantric woman is a manifestation of that combining. And if you see physically, you meet somebody who has achieved that, or at least achieved that in a good level, that is usually very, very inspirational. Like, for example, for me personally, my personal role model, female role model, is the partner of Somananda's teacher, Ananda Maha, and she's alive. She's a real woman. She's a medical doctor. She has been in Tantra for 25 years. And she has been reaching high states through her practice. She's been combining feminine paths in Tantra in an amazing way. And she is my personal role model, somebody I look up to. And I use that example as a big inspiration in my life and on my path as a woman in Tantra. So if you can have a role model, somebody like that, who is a woman, who is a spiritual woman, a strong spiritual woman, who kind of all the boxes are ticked, which I listed earlier, then this is an amazing asset. You should be spending a lot of time with that person as much as possible. So there is definitely a lot of truth in that statement. Next question from Mel. There are many facets and ways a tantric woman can contribute to a relationship, from financial, emotional, sexual, spiritual, and so on. So can you define more clearly and practically what you would consider a helpful and productive contribution from a tantric female in a relationship dynamics? So basically practical examples of how a tantric woman can support the relationship or support the man in the relationship. That's what I'm understanding from the question. Okay, practical examples. So not in any specific order, just in the order how they come into my mind. So whenever any man or woman is on a spiritual path, especially a tantric path, as you know, and Mel, you know as well, that there will be challenges which will come up. So a man on a tantric path will be facing challenges, and they can be of different kinds. They can be challenges regarding, their practice, challenges regarding dealing with their emotions, maybe some some kind of karmic issues which keep on coming back in the same way again and again and again. And the role of the tantric woman then would be at that moment when the man maybe, let's say, is upset, is furious, is angry, is like upset about the situation, that she stays solid, focused, centered, and she doesn't go into the turmoil of emotions herself. She is kind of even playing the role of Shiva at that moment. She listens, she analyzes, she contemplates, and then she says what she thinks about it, and she does it in such a way that that she does not emasculate the man. Not in a way, oh, you weakling, you know, this is simple. You just need to do this and that and fix it. Come on. That is not the way. This needs to be done with the heart, with skill, with love, with compassion. So she stays solid and present, even if the situation is very challenging for her as well, because it can be something that is, difficult to manage. Another example, when there is jealousy coming up in the relationship from one side or another, again, she manages to look at it with cool-headedness, overcome it, not go into this turmoil of that emotion, for example. She, from other perspectives, she can offer ideas, suggestions for the man about, how to take her future forward or her life forward, if she has these abilities, of course. If she is also a yoga teacher, a tantra teacher, a meditation teacher, she can utilize knowledge from there in supporting the man and so on. One of the most fundamental ways how a woman can support a man in a relationship is her humbleness. And humbleness is something which is very challenging to cultivate authentically. But if she's managing to be humble, humbleness is not a weakness, it is a strength. If she manages to be humble, she will be supporting her man in a very, very powerful way in all sorts of different situations. I'm moving on. I hope this kind of gave you some examples. There can be a ton more, but let me move on to the next question from Praveen. Energy is one, ? Or feminine energy is different from masculine energy? There are, of course, overall, we can say that, energy is one, energy is everywhere. Tantra has recognized indeed that the whole universe, the whole manifestation is made of energy. However, if we look closer, there are different kinds of energies. And if you look even closer, then there are energies which are considered more feminine type or more masculine type. And the interesting thing is actually that from a tantric perspective, femininity, or to be a tantric woman, means that you have access and the ability to cultivate both. You can both cultivate the shivaness and the shaktiness. So from that perspective, where was the question? The feminine and masculine energy are kind of the two sides or the two polarities or the two sides of one coin, the two polarities of the same coin. Next question here, being that the majority of the population is already so yin, men and women, does it make sense to cultivate the feminine energy? Absolutely yes, because the feminine energy, femininity in tantric terms, as I just said, does not mean being yin. It is feminine from tantric, authentic, deep aspects, means that you have a balance, that you are able to be yin and yang both at the same time. Like you are, this example or a parallel that I often use is that you are a bird which has two wings equally developed. Not one wing, which is, the yin side, which is like really big, and the yang side is just very, very small here. Femininity, from tantric perspective, means being able to access all the different polarities of energy equally. And besides that, a lot of people are yin, yes. Emotionally, a lot of people are yin in the modern day, which is the Svadhisthana chakra level. However, for example, at the level of the heart chakra, it's often the opposite. Men and women tend to be very blocked, which is actually a kind of a yang phenomena. They are not receptive. They're not able to feel love, to receive love. that is completely different. That's a yang manifestation. So yes, overall our physical bodies tend to be very yin, our emotional level tends to be very, very yin, but on other aspects we can be also very insensitive or yang, and that is also not good. The middle path is what we want to aspire towards. And the last question here, what is the tantric perspective on cultivating both the masculine and feminine energies that exist in all of us, instead of just cultivating the Shiva essence because you are a man and the Shakti essence because you are a woman? Or is this a more new age concept? Should women also cultivate the Shiva essence and vice versa? And how to do this, since the Vira course is only for men and the Shakti course is only for women? Well, I kind of answered this right now. That definitely for a tantric woman on the path to become a tantric woman, definitely the Shivaness is exactly as important as the Shaktiness. Let's call them like that. What I will explain very, very, very thoroughly in the Ultimate Tantric Woman course is exactly those principles. We have the understanding often that femininity is, the more soft and receptive and sweet and cute and emotional and so on. This is not the case. This is just one side of it. The other side is very much to do with the control. And remember, the first criteria how to identify a tantric woman was the control of energy. So both Shiva, Shakti, the masculine and feminine energies inside a woman need to be controlled and need to be cultivated in order to be a tantric woman. And the same is true for men. The reason why these courses are separate, the Vira training, the masculinity training for men is just for men, and the women's training is just for women, is that we are using different methods how to train that. And there are certain nuances for men and women which are just meant to be the women ones for women and the men's ones for men, and they should not be mixing together. Not even should be shared. So those teachings are kept private, like the teachings for men are just for men and not shared with women at all, and the vice versa is true for women. So the methods are different, the tools are very different as well, and some principles are different, and that's why they need to be taught different. Last one from Yanis. When it comes to the role of a tantric woman and her family, do children help with her spiritual development? This is a question where there is no one answer. Some tantric women have decided not to have a family because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, definitely, and it can be considered as, I would rather, go and use my effort, my time, my energy differently. And whereas there are also tantrics tantric women who have a family, who are raising children, and who are integrating the family life into their daily practice as well. And I know women from both sides. So both is possible, and it's a matter of personal choice, foremost. There's no one answer to that. All right, so it's time to conclude. Thank you very much for being here today with me, sharing this 1 hour and plus. And I hope you have beautiful, clear guidelines to identify tantric women out there. You have a scanner now for that. Thank you all very much. Have a good day, good evening, good night, wherever you are, and thank you. Bye.